Alright, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to another pose practice. This is number 4, I think, and for this video I chose some more action poses, or well, the second one is more of an action pose, this first one is kind of a stretching pose, and the reason why I chose this is because the body is bending in a very weird way. So I figured this would be a fun one to do. And the first thing that I did when it came to drawing this pose is actually draw on the image itself. First, I wanted to figure out where the center of gravity was, and I think it's right around where her belly button is, and it goes straight down. It's kind of hard to figure that out, especially when you can't do the pose yourself, and with a pose like this, especially where her legs and arms are above her head. And for those of you who don't know, the center of gravity is the point where the body is completely balanced. So if you were to hold a pen and balance it on your finger, the point where the pen is perfectly balanced, that would be the center of gravity. In the human body, when somebody is just standing straight up, that center of gravity is right around the level of the hips. But depending on how they move, the position of the center of gravity can change. And it changes a lot based on what the torso and arms are doing. The torso, on average, contains around 50% of the body's weight, and the arms contain around 5% each, so 10% in total, which leaves 40% for the legs, 20% for each leg. So depending on what the arms are doing, the center of gravity can actually move a lot. And in this case, one leg and one arm are way up in the air, so that would actually affect it quite a bit. But because of how she's holding them, and because they match up like directly above her body, I'm pretty sure that would put the center of gravity right in line with her belly button. Another thing that I kind of struggled with this pose was the way the body is bending, because as you can see, her body is bent to the right side. Her shoulder is touching her knee, I'm pretty sure. And the spine is pretty flexible when it comes to extending and flexing, but when it comes to bending laterally, so side to side, it's not particularly flexible. I'm pretty sure it's able to do that by around 60 degrees. And that's 60 degrees over the whole length of the spine, not including the cervical section of the head, of course. But that also means that each individual vertebrae isn't really bending that much. The problem here is that her body is bent more than 60 degrees, which is partially because she's more flexible, so she can go further, slightly further than that 60 degrees, but also because other body parts can move independently from the spine. The shoulders and legs are a big one. The shoulders, for example, they're able to tilt independently from the rib cage. The rib cage is of course influenced by the spine. So the shoulders are able to tilt independently from the rib cage, which means the shoulders usually don't follow the same tilt as the rib cage. In this image, for example, you can see where the bottom of her rib cage is, and it's almost like 45 degrees to the floor, whereas her shoulders are basically parallel to the floor. And then if you look at her hips, her pelvis is almost perpendicular to the floor, I want to say, but then her legs are bent a lot more than 180 degrees from each other. Those two things combined with how the spine is able to move means that the body is actually able to bend a deceptively large amount. And if we bring that back to my drawing, you can see that the way the torso is bent in my drawing is not quite as far as it is in the original. I think the rib cage is actually bent the correct amount. The shoulders aren't, and because the shoulders aren't, the center line is not bent far enough either. So if you're trying to draw this pose as well, that's one very big thing to watch out for. Look at where the pit of her neck is compared to where the bottom of the rib cage is. If you imagine a center line on the front of her body, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So that's something that I'm still going to have to practice a bit. And let's see, is there another thing I wanted to talk about? Probably the way the body squashes and stretches. That's actually another kind of annoying thing, because I'm pretty sure we all know how the knee works, right? If we say that the upper leg and lower leg are the same length as each other, hypothetically speaking, if you were to bend the leg and then you were to measure the length of the lower leg and the length of the upper leg again, it would appear like they got longer, which of course didn't really happen. It's just that the way you're measuring the leg is different, because normally you're measuring from the groin area to the bottom of the knee for the upper leg, and then from the bottom of the knee you're measuring to the ankle for the lower leg. But when the leg is bent, you're measuring from the ankle to the top of the knee, and you're measuring from the groin area to the front of the knee, which makes it look like the leg got longer. And that sort of optical illusion happens all throughout the body. You're dealing with it in the elbow, you're dealing with it in the hand, which is why they're so difficult to draw, because you're dealing with that proportion changing 3 times in every single finger. And it also happens when the torso is bending. One side appears to get longer, whereas the other side appears to get shorter. But what's happening is that the side that appears to get shorter is actually getting squished, and then the other side is of course getting stretched. I think getting better at that would also require some specific focused practice, so maybe the next pose practice video will include some poses that include that as well. By the way, if you guys have any suggestions for poses that you want me to do in these videos, you could leave it in the comments, and I also stream kind of frequently, so you could also drop by the stream and then tell me about it there. But moving on to the next pose, this one is more of an action pose, and I actually don't know what that black dot is on the ocean. I don't know if I drew that or if that was in the original image, but it's kind of distracting. Anyways, I didn't talk about the horizon line in the previous image, but I think the horizon line in the previous image was also around the level of the belly button. But in this case, there's an actual horizon there. You can see that it's around the level of the belly button, right in the middle of the image, which is usually where the horizon line is, by the way. The position of the horizon line is determined by the height of the camera or the height of the eyes of the viewer, compared to the ground, of course. And usually that means that the horizon line will be right in the center of the image, because you can always see just as much above the horizon line as you can see below it. The only time that changes is when the camera tilts up or down. If the camera tilts up, the horizon line is still going to be at the height of the camera. The horizon line isn't going to move. But now the camera is seeing more of the area above the horizon, so it'll appear like the horizon line is going down. And when the camera is tilted down, the opposite happens. It will appear like the horizon line is moving up, but in reality, the camera is just recording more of the image below the horizon and less of the image above the horizon. Technically, there is another way to influence the position of the horizon line, and that's by zooming in on an image. So in this image, for example, if we were to cut off everything below his left knee, the knee that's or the leg that's supporting his body, if we were to zoom in on everything above that, it would appear like the horizon line is moving down. That doesn't happen very often, but that is an additional technique you can use if you want. And the reason why the horizon line is really important is because, for one, every single vanishing point that's parallel to the ground will converge to the horizon line. But also, if a camera is tilted down or tilted up, it means that the image becomes a 3-point perspective image. There's now going to be a vanishing point above or below the horizon line. Whereas if the camera is just looking straight ahead, it means that the image has to be either 1 or 2-point perspective. Anyway, that's it for me getting sidetracked with the horizon line. In this pose, I think it was really hard to figure out where the center of gravity was, because if you want to make a pose look balanced, the center of gravity has to fall within your base of support. The base of support in this case being the foot that's touching the ground. So if you want to draw a character that doesn't appear like they're falling over, their center of gravity has to fall on that base of support. So in this case, if we want to draw this guy as if he isn't falling over, we have to make sure that his center of gravity is right above that foot that's supporting his weight. However, if somebody is in the middle of an action, they don't always have to be balanced. If you're sprinting at full speed, for example, your center of gravity will always be outside of your base of support, and you have to throw one of your legs forward to make sure that you don't fall. But in that case, the center of gravity is always outside of your base of support, so if you draw a still image of somebody sprinting, it's always going to look like they're falling over. And you see that sort of stuff a lot when you're trying to draw fight scenes. People are constantly throwing their weight around, hopping around on one leg. So that's something that's very important to pay attention to, as well as practice. And seeing as how I've been talking about nothing but the center of gravity for this whole video, I might as well continue. You can see that his right hand is parallel to the ground. That hand has to be there, because otherwise there's going to be too much weight on the other side of his body and he's going to be even more unbalanced. And like I said before, the torso is 50% of the body's weight, arms are 10%, each leg is 20%, so if he were to bring his arms in, that would be 60% of his body weight going the other way around, and it'd be really hard to keep himself balanced. He'd have to have a really strong core for that. And now that I'm getting a good look at this, he actually kind of looks like he's photoshopped into the image, doesn't he? Because there's no cast shadow on the ground. There's a very dark occlusion shadow underneath his foot, but there's no cast shadow because it's an overcast day, so the sun can't create that shadow. But yeah, I guess that is another thing to pay attention to if you're trying to draw scenes like this. It's really hard for real people to look like they exist in these scenes, so it'd be really hard for your drawn characters to look like they actually exist in these scenes too. But I think I'm pretty much done with this drawing. If you'd like to support the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you became a member on Patreon or a channel member here on YouTube. We also have a Discord server that's linked in the description, so if you'd like to hang out with the community, you can do so there. But I hope this video was helpful, and I guess I'll see you guys next time.